Welcome in to the Just Basketball Show. It is November 9th. I'm Brendon Kleen. That is Chris Manning. Thank you for joining us once again. Follow us wherever you're finding the show. We're free and available everywhere, including YouTube. You can also find us across social media, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you live on the internet. We likely live there as well. Today's show brought to you by Thrive Fantasy, a player prop daily fantasy sports platform where you can pick more or less on your favorite players across multiple sports, including the NBA and NFL. Sign up today with code JustBasketball, all one word, and Thrive will match your first deposit up to $250. We have Vince Goodwill coming up to close out the show. We're going to play basketball speed dating with him, get his thoughts on the Clippers, the Suns, and a little bit on the Warriors. But first,
Brendon, we actually have live. I sent you this via text. Some breaking NBA news that we need to react to. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, Jamal Murray is going to miss the remainder of the month of November due to a right hamstring strain. Breaking news.
One thing quickly. First, Woj put SPN sources in the original tweet, which is just great. Also, we're going to need to work on your pronunciation of the big man's name, but those are two things we can sort out later.
I was going to put this.
I don't know what you said, if I'm being completely honest. I feel like if I tried to say what you said, that would sound. We would just get another layer deep on the whole issue in the first place.
I think I just hallucinated the breaking news to make sure you saw it, and I panicked, and it's Wojnarowski, and I think I just fucked
There we
up.
go. It's okay.
I know what
Jamal Murray's out is the point, and I thought about bringing this up as like a what matters more thing, but it's always just sort of like injuries are injuries. You never really know what to make of it. But this one's big. A month is a long time. I think Michael Malone, his quote the other night was, "This is more than a 1 or 2 day thing." And that raised my eyebrows. Obviously, the remainder of November is one thing, and it doesn't exactly say like he will return this game and this is when he will be back. And a hamstring is better than anything related to his knee, Chris, but this is a team that had amazing injury luck last year and thinned out their bench over the offseason, so this will test them. It'll be, can Reggie Jackson look like a regular NBA player again, and can somebody like Julian Strawther step up and be a real rotation guy, maybe even more than we already were expecting him to?
Hamstrings also just scare me a little bit, Brendon, because they're one of the things that it just actually takes time to heal. So I'm glad that Murray is not just going to miss a week and is going to test it. I think we knew based on the quotes that it seemed like he was going to miss some time, but I'm glad it's not just like a week or two. They're going to give him the month to get right. This is someone that they're not repeating or making a playoff run without, as good as Jokic is, and we know how important he is. We know he's the driver to this. Murray is the co-star to this. Murray is the one that elevated them in a lot of ways last year. Like, you saw what happened when he wasn't around in the playoffs. To have him back is a really big deal. To have him healthy at the most important time of the year for a team that I think we both picked to win the NBA championship this year is really important. So injury is not fun. It's going to be some growing pains for some guys. Perhaps an opportunity for Michael Porter Jr. to do a little bit more and expand his wings in a way that I think would be good for Michael Porter Jr. But obviously, the long-term thing here, the marathon, so to speak, of an NBA season is more important than the month he's going to miss. But it sucks, and it's just you'd like to see Jamal Murray just have like a normal, healthy season and like make an all-star team and push for All-NBA or something. Like that would be cool too.
Absolutely. I think the place my head goes on top of all of that is that we all hoped might make his first All-Star or All-NBA team this year. And especially for All-Star, missing a month of the first half of the season, which is all that is up for contention for All-Star, is a big bummer. So I don't want to count any chickens or anything like that now, but Murray, the case for him to be that this year, finally get that recognition, which he earned last year, is definitely in doubt. I'm excited to see Julian Strawther. I think he's somebody that really, got Nuggets fans' attention and kind of lifted himself out of the who's the young guy that's going to step up. And we talked about him in our preview of this team as the guy we might be talking about by the end of the season. I would say if he can do anything in this stretch, we'll be talking about him. And it won't even take until the end of the season to do that, Chris. So while we're on the injury note, any thoughts on Robert Williams, the surgery that he is undergoing? I just honestly kind of think Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens in Boston kind of screwed him, asking him to, well, I guess Danny Ainge was gone, so we're going Brad Stevens and Ime Udoka, asking him to play on that injured knee the year that they made the finals. I don't know if he'll ever be back to what he was, and he got his money, but that's pretty terrible if it's what happened.
Yeah, I would just like him to take whatever is going to give him the best chance to be healthy the rest of his career. It's certainly, I think this is the most important thing, so I want to couch what I'm about to say, but I think it's obviously a bummer that one of the more interesting pieces that could have been on the market, someone that, I at least looked at as someone that Memphis Grizzlies should just go be aggressive and get, is now off the market. That's one of the more interesting names that could have been out there to really help some of these really ambitious teams out there. So that in itself is a bummer. But Robert Williams is still, like, for someone that has been through so much injury-wise, he's 26. Like, there should be a lot of really good basketball ahead of him, and it feels like he's getting really kind of hampered at what should be part of the prime of his career. So that's never going to be fun.
He is one of those players, too, who we talk about, like, Kevin Durant or somebody or Steph Curry, where it's like their game's not predicated on athleticism, so XYZ. It's like the opposite with Robert Williams. His game is entirely predicated on athleticism, and if he can't be that lob threat and rim protector and switchable, get down in a crouch and guard smaller guys type of defensive and offensive force inside, then his impact starts to just kind of go away. It almost doesn't exist. Those are the main things he's out there for. So yes, hope that he can get right and hope that Portland can provide him with the resources and time and not pressure him in a way maybe Boston did, and that he can sort of, reevaluate his career and whatever might be next beyond that. But let's get to Think That I Saw It on NBA League Pass, where we just steal Dr. Seuss's wonderful work and co-opt it into a little bit of a journey around the league. And we're just going to go rapid fire, meander through some things we've observed watching, not the biggest games, not the games everybody's talking about, but just the stuff as we flip on NBA League Pass each week that catches our attention, that we do some research on, that we save a clip from, whatever it might be. I will let you start us off, Chris. What is your biggest observation from this past week in NBA League Pass basketball?
It's Anthony Edwards. If it's not, then I don't know what else we could have been watching here. There's other things we could go to that are really important, and things I think if we don't get to them today, we're going to come back to. But Anthony Edwards, I think, just played the best game I've ever seen him play. He was the best player on the floor against Boston in a game Minnesota came back and won. And for him to do that against Jason Tatum, against Jaylen Brown, against that Celtics team is incredibly impressive. And it wasn't just him scoring, which he did. It wasn't him attacking, which he did. Defensively, that was an incredible Ant game. I mean, there's a clip that I'm sure people have, if they didn't watch that game, have seen on Instagram and seen on TikTok, and I saw on Twitter, X, that was him locking up Tatum and getting a steal. And I've never seen Anthony Edwards play defense quite like that against a guy as good as him. Brendon, that
and
game
bigger
to
than
me,
him,
and bigger than him. I mean, in Ant. Look, this might be hyperbole. I might be getting a little ahead of myself. It's possible. But in the non-Victor Wembanyama category of young, up-and-coming still, like not fully in their prime superstars, I think Ant's like my number 2 on that list. This game was everything you could want, and what is proving himself to be is everything you could want in a franchise guy. This guy, it leaves you, there's nothing more you could want him to do on a basketball court. This game is like, put that out into the universe, and that guy can lead a team to a title. That guy is here. He's doing stuff an elevation of anything we've ever seen him do before. The Wolves look kind of good as a result of him, even with Cat being kind of hit or miss, and I want more minutes for Naz Reid and all of these things that are kind of imperfect about that team. Anthony Edwards is superseding them, and he beat the freaking Boston Celtics. It felt like in a lot of ways by himself. Cannot be more impressed by him.
You combined our two takes. You kind of stole my best game he's ever played take, but you did it in service of your own. Yes. He's the best guard prospect. You split the difference. I appreciate that. I respect that. I think That game was really fun. I think he took the team on his back as a leader too, and we were texting about this a little bit. There was a moment early on, just Jaden McDaniels was very cold. Ant got the ball in transition, I believe in the second quarter, dished it to Jaden in the right corner on a fast break, and finally kind of broke the ice of his night. Jaden's made the corner three, and Ant just knew the timeout was coming, froze at the free throw line, and just like dogged him, but like in a good way, and just like kind of gestured like, fuck yeah, man, like we did that. And that type of thing is what always makes you feel so much more like this dude has something special, even than what he does as a basketball player. There was a moment late at the end of the fourth quarter when Cat didn't get a call on, they didn't get a rebound, and they gave up an offensive putback to the Celtics. Gobert and Cat just like slapping the ball around on the ground and couldn't just pick it up. And Cat's like screaming at nobody, like overly frustrated about a play where they were still in the lead. And Ant just, if you're focused on Cat's face getting upset, Ant just sweeps by and then he scores. And you're like, that's the guy I think that I want with the ball. That's the guy who can't like get his head on straight a lot of the time during these games. And it was just another reminder. But yeah, this season, Edwards, 14 of 26 on pull-up threes. That's the thing. That's the big swing skill, swing stat for him is can he make that shot? And he was 2 of 8 in this game, but he made 14 of 26 so far on the season. He's also finishing 72% at the rim. So if those numbers are even close, he's not going to shoot 50% on pull-up threes, but if it's even 35 plus, 40 plus, great. And if the finishing is even better too, then you're really talking about a special offensive season. They're also first in defense. And this game to me, the Wolves are, and this game to me was a complete like modern NBA puzzle where Drew Holiday and Cat are matched up most of the night. And then it's like they are switching Conley onto Porzingis just to dare Porzingis to they're giving up a wide open, giving a foot defensively 3 to Porzingis because that's better than the alternatives. It was just one of those games where you're like, positions straight up, throw them in the trash. I thought it was one of the more fun games we've seen this year.
Well, even if you go to overtime, the play that the bucket from Ant that sticks in my mind, he hits it at 1:31 to go in overtime. It puts the Wolves up 7. So all they do in this play, it's incredibly simple, is Kyle Anderson sets to like a fake screen on Drew Holiday to get the switch. So Porzingis switches on Ant in this instance. Ant drives with his left hand. The Celtics, if you go back and watch this clip, and the Wolves threw it out on Twitter, so it's pretty easy to find.
Timberwolves
Jaylen
Brazil
Brown,
or the real Timberwolves account.
This clip is pornographic enough to maybe be tweeted out by Timberwolves
Could have been,
Brazil.
yeah.
But it's not quite as overtly like whatever is going on with that account. I had not seen that, by the way, and then I went on Reddit and was just like, what?
It's
it's a thing.
If Twitter had not been purchased and evolved a little bit, it might have been banned. The account might have not survived the Jack Dorsey Twitter.
No. Anthony Edwards, though, would survive Jack Dorsey Twitter. But he drives left on Porzingis. If you look at you freeze the play, Tatum's on the other side looking at him. Brown is in the corner, gonna slide over and help at a certain point. Porzingis is sliding with him. Drew Holiday has just said, F it, I'm not sticking with Kyle Anderson. I'm going to come trap you. Al Horford is defending Cat, who is like slipping towards the rim and is fully at the free throw line, a little below it, looking at Anthony Edwards. All 5 guys on the floor for the Celtics are looking at Ant. And what does he do? He dribbles in, he stops on a dime, he rotates back and hits a fadeaway floater over the Amsterdam Porzingis. It didn't matter that 5 guys are looking at him. He just got the switch he wanted, got to exactly where he wanted, exploded, got the bucket, iced the game. I mean, you can't, that is unguardable. He is at that point where that guy is absolutely can do everything you need him to do. And he's got to that point, Brendon, where when he's hitting the pull-ups, when he's doing stuff like this, that is like, puts you in the category of guy to me that if it's a late game, a tight playoff game, you can give him the ball, do very simple machinations to get the right matchups, and trust him to make the right scoring decisions, the right passing decisions, and get the spots that are going to get his team a dub. It's at that level.
All right, a lot of games on Wednesday night, and I think we're safe to talk about Milwaukee since they are playing the Pistons, and I don't expect that game will change what I'm about to say. So my first observation here is about Giannis and the Bucks offense. Now, their defense has gotten a lot of attention. I don't know if you saw the quote, Chris, of Adrian Griffin being like, the guys wanted Brook and drop, so we're going to do that now. And it's like, oh, the dude who was a Defensive Player of the Year finalist because he planted himself at the basket and basically created like the defining defensive scheme of this generation of basketball, wanted to keep doing that, and then now you're going to say, okay. But they are 27th in defense this season, 4-2 on the year, 22nd in net rating. Their offense is 12th, but it just should be higher. And Zach Lowe had an interesting stat in his 7 things, which is no longer 10 things, last week at ESPN, where he said that they're running Dame and Giannis about 7 pick and rolls per game. Compared that to Lillard with Nurkic or Lillard with Enes Kanter, and those numbers were often higher than what he's running with Giannis right now, which just doesn't make a lot of sense. I looked it up, and this year Giannis is averaging total 77.5 touches per game, 4.7 minutes in terms of time of possession for him as a player. I believe that's what the stat is on NBA.com. It just says 4.7, so I'll just say minutes per game. Last year, it was about the same. And so it might not sound like a huge problem, but they traded for a guy named Damian Lillard this offseason. And Chris Middleton is healthy. And there are still so many possessions, including in the game against Brooklyn that they almost lost, where he just dribbles the ball into jumpers. And I thought we were done with that. I thought that was done once they got maybe the best offensive player that he's ever played with. I mean, I think he would have to be the best offensive player that Giannis has ever played with.
It's not a maybe. He is the best.
And yet their habits are the same. What is going on with the Milwaukee Bucks?
It doesn't really make sense to me. If you just look at Dame's usage rate for this season, Brendon, 26.9. The last time he had a number at this or lower, it was his 3rd season in the NBA. He was 24 years old. Since then, he has had 2 seasons, where he was under 30% usage rate. That was 29.3 twice, which he had 2 years ago and then a few years before that. This is a guy that is high usage, and he's incredibly efficient at high usage. And you should just be putting the ball in his hands, and Giannis should be catering to him to allow him to be the best version of himself, because it's going to make the Bucks a heck of a lot better. You don't trade for trading for Damian Lillard and doing the same stuff the Bucks are doing. It's like buying like a sports car and like not taking it on the highway, and you're driving at like 45 through the suburbs. Like, you're not actually using it for its intended God-given purpose. You're just
or those cars like my wife's Toyota Corolla has like the pedal shifter, like the little hand shifter on the steering wheel, and it's like, no, this isn't automatic. I'm just going to take advantage of that. I don't want to go back in time and make life harder on myself.
Right. You're actively choosing something that is not making your team better, and I don't quite understand it. Maybe it is still early. It's 6 games. I think we have to say that. It's early still because these guys, they haven't played even 10 games together yet. I'm willing to you have to, I think, give this time to evolve and breathe and figure itself out, and everyone being healthy will allow some of that. But this being like the initial result is, I think, incredibly disappointing. I think there's no way around it that the process the Bucks are having on offense right now, it is incredibly disappointing based on what we know about what Giannis is really good at and what Dame is really good at.
Chris Middleton also healthy. I know he's missed games. I know he's not at his best, but when I watch them, when he has played, he is still capable of getting a bucket. That's another guy who needs to get his and get fed. And yet, again, I don't know what goes through Giannis's head in these moments, but him pump faking into a standstill 3 is straight up bad offense. It's bad. There's no way around that. And the last observation I would have on this whole thing, when we talk about the pick and roll and how Lillard is being used and who he's in tandem with on the court, a pick and roll with him and Lopez, Dame and Brook, is very similar to Nurkic or Kanter. And I do think that one of the downsides of running that is, because there's obviously the Giannis can then cut, Giannis can be in the dunker spot and be a threat for a dump off or an offensive rebound, and that's not terrible. But Brook's feet are slow. If you're running a pick and pop and trying to go 5 out with Dame as the ball handler, Brook's not the type of guy who's going to have the fluidity to set that screen, really quickly pivot up to the top of the key, get out of the way, and be there to space. He's going to get in the way. And if he's rolling, he's not a lob threat. He's not really like a downhill athletic finisher. He's sort of just mucking things up a lot of the time. And so, again, it just returns us to Dame and Giannis need to be running pick and roll because that's the best combination on this team. That opens up the most for everybody else. That creates the best floor balance, and it makes the best use of the star talent that they have. What is your next observation?
I want to go to I'm going to go my backyard here because I think this is worth noting big picture, and that's Darius Garland, who's back, looks healthy, and he's playing at tempo. If you watch the Cavs at all last year, and you watch them in the playoffs even, you saw how slow they like to play. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are great at a lot of things. One of the things I think is their biggest weakness, and I think is a weakness of a lot of the best players in the league at times, frankly, is they like to take their sweet old time getting the ball across half court. So you get in the sets at 16 seconds, 14 seconds left in the shot clock, and you're not leaving yourself a lot of time to really work. At Cavs Warriors on Saturday, which best Cavs win of the season, not even close, against a Warriors team that I am increasingly really liking and liking a lot of the pieces and minutes are getting from guys like Kuminga, who I think we should maybe talk about. We should talk about the Warriors maybe like next week. That should be on the list. Tristan Thompson gets a rebound. By the way, Tristan Thompson, backup center, is like not a thing I expected to be saying.
I thought it'd be Damian Jones. I like Damian Jones, but
Damian Jones lasted a game and a half, and it's over for him, I guess. But Darius Garland claps at Tristan Thompson to get him the ball the moment Tristan gets the rebound. He takes the ball up the floor. They get into a set. He gets to the line. He gets your free throws. Does the same thing the next possession, but gets a bucket. There's sets in this game where he gets the ball across half court. They run a simple action. It gets Donovan Mitchell a 3 with like 19-20 seconds left in the shot clock. The Cavs' numbers right now, wonky. They still have a lot to figure out. They start a West Coast road trip the day we're recording this in OKC. Get Golden State again. Get Sacramento. Get Portland. They got out of, if he's going to play a tempo, and if they're going to start evolving in that way, and you start seeing some of the promise, it's going to alleviate a lot of the offensive problems I think we saw with this team last year, and it's going to make Darius Garland even more empowered, I think. So if this holds, if that's a real thing, I think you're about to see Darius Garland really, really unleash in a way that we haven't seen so far from him yet.
Cleveland, 6th in transition frequency this year, best in transition efficiency on the season. It feels like there's a lot of teams that are remembering it's fun and helpful to play really fast, like Atlanta, Dallas, some of these teams that, for better and worse, got a little stuck in the mud at times and want to play through their best guard and just really slow things down. It feels like there's a renewed emphasis on that around the league, and that's good to see because, when you have great guards, including Garland, they're just as good in space as they are creating shots in the half court, often better. So I like it. I think it helps Donovan as well, and even Mobley, who I know grab and go is kind of like maybe step one for what Evan Mobley can ultimately be as an offensive creator, is getting him to just take the rebound and do something as a scorer or as a creator for his teammates. Anything else on the Cavs? I have one more maybe we can hit. I'm a little underwhelmed by Evan Mobley in offense so far, but that's another maybe big picture conversation we're going to need to do at some point. If we check in on guys like Scotty Barnes and that draft class a little bit, I think he has been a little disappointing on offense. And when I say little, I mean kind of actually really disappointing. Yeah. All right. Going over to Oklahoma City. I've been keeping a running log of games inspired by you, who I don't think has been using the sheet that you sent me that I replicated and used, Chris, but I have been doing it because I wanted to just see how many games I watch. Obviously, it hasn't changed how much or whatever. I'm not saying you're not watching. I just mean it's fun to kind of keep an eye on how often, how many, who am I watching the most of, whatever. And it's been the Thunder. It's been the Thunder, and then it's been the Lakers because they're always on national TV. But the thing that has surprised me the most, or that I've gravitated toward, gotten really excited watching about this Oklahoma City team this year, that is aside from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or the development of J-Dub, who I'm rooting for in every facet of life, is the Josh Giddey-Chet Holmgren pick and pop.
Mm-hmm.
And the chemistry that those two guys are building, and how that is changing the context of the Thunder offense in general. So it's often in semi-transition. It's often before the defense gets set, and that's part of what makes Josh Giddey so fun, is he's in control even when things feel like they're still moving around. Guys aren't fully spaced yet. The defense doesn't know where it is. There's cross matches here and there. You feel like he just grabbed the rebound because he's a great rebounder, Giddey too, and all of a sudden he's downhill. Chet's swinging back to the top of the arc. Very different than Brook Lopez, who I just mentioned. Chet can just flip himself back to being a shooter and a spot up and a spacer immediately off that screen. And Giddey's downhill. And obviously he's not as fast as some guys. He's not as maybe much of an athletic threat to finish. But his power downhill drives are just something that I don't feel like defenses have an answer for, especially when they come so early in the shot clock before that defense is set. And you have the defense now needing to pay attention to Chet at the same time. He's averaging 1 assist per game to Chet this year, more than anybody else that he's assisted so far. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it's 1 per game. That's, think about how many assists guys get per game. It's only 5 or 6. One of them's going to Chet. Giddey is also leading Oklahoma City in assist percentage this year, while Shai has gone down in usage and higher in assist himself. So you're seeing the balancing out of this offense in a way that we knew might have to come. And a lot of it is happening when they decide to play fast, and when they decide to play in semi-transition, and when they just have that simple side pick and roll between Josh Giddey and Chet Holmgren. That opens up a ton for the rest of this team.
I think that partnership, too, is really in vogue, or really in focus, I should say. On last Friday, they played the Warriors in an in-season tournament game. No Shai, who missed that game just out with an injury. Giddey had 12 in the fourth, and he was I felt like the lead creator on that team, more than J-Dub. I know Dort had 29, but Giddey had his hand on the wheel of that game for the most part, and Chet ends up with 24, and I think there's some correlation there. Those guys, you're right, they have instant chemistry. I think Giddey's been really good to start the year and really finding a niche for himself, and I think, maybe troubling just kind of fully emphasizes that when Shai is out. That's not really here or there, though. I mean, the thing about Chet that I think has hit the ground running with him, even on nights where he's not perfect, is it's clear he knows he has a role. It's clear he has utility. And he just fits with a guy like Giddey, who wants to be unselfish, who wants to make the right pass, who wants to find his guys. Like, this is as optimistic as I think a lot of people are, and I think us included, on what the Thunder are doing. It's been a pretty seamless fit. And I think everything you said kind of exemplifies that. This team feels like a clearly much more complete version of itself with putting Chet in there. And Giddey, I think, is kind of a big part of why Chet fits so well, because he's just feeding Chet, getting him clean looks. And it's not unguardable, because you can still dare Giddey to shoot. You can still go under screens on him, all of that stuff. But it's on that high-level play that's definitely, I'm sure, in the scouting reports when teams are getting up to play OKC.
When you build a roster the way that they have, with big ball handlers at every spot, you're naturally going to play a lot of isolation basketball and mismatch hunt and, just sort of spread and drive. And that doesn't lend itself super well to really incorporating actions where all the best players are touching the ball, all the best players are in sync with one another. And so when we talked preseason about Giddey and Shai and how they're going to fit and whatever that's going to look like in the next iteration of this team, now that Giddey is taking on a bigger role and Shai needs to probably take a step back, it was hard, because it's like, well, neither of them is amazing as a spot-up shooter. Neither of them necessarily is an athletic finisher that's going to kind of be, jaw kicking to Bane or something. What is it going to look like? And I think that what you're seeing is that they're sort of solving that problem by, it's like, when we go fast, it's Josh. When we go slow, it's Shai. And the Thunder are running off of live rebounds 4% more often with Josh Giddey on the court. And Shea is taking twice as many threes per 100 possessions this year. So 2 more kind of ticks in the column of what does it look like as those 2 guys integrate with one another. I feel a lot better right now, Chris, about these 2 fitting than I did even a month ago, if I'm being honest. Yeah. I feel like you've been more bullish about it than me all along. I was running they're going to have to trade Giddey sooner than later thing when we did their preview, but they're figuring it out.
Yeah, I think Mark Daigneault is doing an amazing job coaching this team, and I think another name that is worth a shout here amid this OKC season so far is Keyshawn Wallace has been like playable and good as a rookie, and just a lot of fun. He's dogged, he's tough. Like they're adding all these pieces that I think make those fits make sense, right? That allow I think a lot of this kind of to come together in a real way. And there's still moves to be made. There's still a lot to be figured out, but the foundation like is absolutely there with the pieces they've added in the way Giddey is playing so far.
Yeah, speaking of rookies who have just hit the ground running, Chet feels like he's a 5-year vet.
Mm-hmm.
I know the last time we checked in on him, it was against Jokic when he kind of got his welcome to the NBA moment a little bit. But there's games where I'm like, is he their second best player? Chet already? Like any given night you watch this team, you're going to think their second best player is Giddey. It's J-Dub. It's Holmgren. Like that's what's so fun about them. But he just is so steady and comfortable and confident for them already and just poses unanswerable questions for the defense. I think Chet as an offensive player right now is more impactful. His rebounding is still kind of a problem for them on the defensive glass, but he just has not missed a beat. He looks like he was born to play center for this team.
Yeah, the other thing I would just add is Chet has not, I don't think, talked about this at length in a way that I've seen, at least. If someone has seen something that...
Has he talked at length? Period?
No.
Doesn't seem like a talker.
Maybe he did that really great like video thing that Andrew, I can't pronounce his last name, that the Thunder Bee reporter for the Athletic does, and he did that, which is fun. But I would love to like get to, if I could hear Chet talk for like 10 minutes and answer questions about one thing, it would be what did that year off allow for him? Right? Like I'm sure that he would have preferred to play. I'm sure he would have. And I'm sure being hurt was not fun. I'm sure the whole year wasn't just getting ready, but like what did that kind of gap year, that forced gap year due to injury allow him that sets him up for this? I would just like to know because I've heard Steve Kerr talk about this, other coaches talked about this. Guys come into the league so young now. He would have been really young coming into the league and grow, and you see the growing pains, I think, more drastically than you might have a decade ago when guys maybe came in a little bit older, or 2 decades ago, or way back in the heyday. What did that year that allowed him to grow up, maybe add some muscle, understand some NBA things, learn what it means to be an adult not in college? What did that allow for him to hit the ground running this year? I just think that would be a fascinating insight into where Chet is at a little bit. I think there's one last thing.
It's crazy, man.
The West is the NBA in general, and it's an amazing place. If you look at what is coming down the line, you look at the young guys now, you look at all the really great players we have in this league right now, the league's in a really good spot if the talent develops. I think a lot of it is going to develop. Even guys that maybe aren't going to make like a ton of, like guys that get squeezed on All-Star games or something. I think there's a lot of guys where you're just going to be like, that's actually like an All-Star caliber guy that just got a little bit unlucky and only made like 3 All-Star games because of just the talent pool right now. I think that's kind of where we're headed a little bit, and it feels like a big league. Can I just ask you one last thing before we transition to Vince Goodwill, Brendon?
Yeah.
So Shams reported Wednesday that there's talk of maybe doing 2 nights of the NBA draft, like having round 1 on one night, round 2 on another. I don't know how you feel about this. My instant reaction was why? Like no one actually watches the NBA draft the way the NFL draft does. Like I understand like making it a bigger thing. I understand content and filling TV time and all. I understand there's probably business reasons beyond this, beyond the general managers apparently saying they would like more time for both picks. Okay, whatever. I just don't really feel it unless you're gonna,
because the teams that get eliminated in April really need more than 2.5 months before the end of June for the draft.
Yeah,
not enough.
You need the extra like 5 minutes you're getting on each pick to make sure you got it. The Spurs definitely needed more time to take Victor Wembanyama. You know, like they needed more time to think through it.
I think it is all the business. I mean, I know that's a dumb answer, but
that's not a dumb answer. That's the answer.
That's the answer. To me. But beyond that, I think what I thought of immediately, a more specific way that it's about the business is it's more streaming or additional rights holder partner content. It's airwave time for NBC when they jump on, or Apple or Amazon. We're about to get a lot more places that the NBA is on than we're used to. And whoever that is, the NBA now can waive this extra draft night in front of and say either ESPN, you're now paying more than you previously have because this is now a 2-night primetime event that you can televise, which even though, like to your point, Chris, it doesn't get a lot of viewership, I guarantee you it gets more viewership than some random college volleyball game, right? So that's better, and ESPN would put it on or wherever would put it on. And then if it's not ESPN doubling up or paying more, then it's, hey, we're going to split it because that's what the NFL does, or at least they still have the latter days of the NFL draft on NFL Network, right? So it's split up, and you got to chase it and find where it is if you're a draft head or you're an NBA junkie, and maybe it's Apple. Maybe it's like day 2 is an Apple exclusive. Turn on your Apple TV and sit down and watch the draft. I mean, that's where we're headed.
I think we are in this era where like there is sometimes just too much. Like this is like a step too far. And I get it. I get you're going to do some streams in this. You're going to have a stream with Gavoni on it, and you could watch the ESPN one with Billis on it, and Zach Lowe will be on with Gavoni or whatever it's going to be. I get it. I'm for like alternate options, but I think you could do that just having the draft one night. If you're going to do if you're going to do a second night of the draft, give me a third round.
Well, that's like a league-altering thing, whereas
I know,
this is just content. But yes, I mean, you're not wrong, but I think you just look at the in-season tournament, you look at the play-in tournament, you look at all these things. Yes, it is designed for competitive extraction of more hype, more energy, more something happening to make the season more valuable, so to speak, but it's also stuff to put on TV. And there's a reason that tiny sports leagues are often owned by entertainment companies, because that's what this is, you know? All right, Vince Goodwill next. First award from Homage, an ultra-comfortable specialty apparel company we love with NBA and WNBA licenses that use vintage-inspired designs to pay homage to the greatest stories, traditions, and figures across sports, music, and pop culture. National parks, too. I got a sick Grand Canyon shirt. Use the link below. Make your purchase. Support the Just Basketball Show. That's in the description. Buy whatever. Christmas, Hanukkah, all the things that you celebrate in the holidays are right around the corner. Buy a shirt for somebody you love. Sports, music, pop culture. They're soft as hell. They're wonderful. Support the Just Basketball Show along the way. That will wrap this part up. Vince Goodwill next. Basketball speed dating. Clippers, Warriors, Suns. Enjoy. Excited to be joined by Vince Goodwill of Yahoo Sports. He is a senior writer doing great work over there on his podcast in the written form all over the basketball media airwaves. And we are going to start out, I think, by getting to know Vince a little bit. We like to do this with our guests when they come on the show, and pardon the familiarity or the intimacy of the title of the segment, Vince, but it is called NBA Speed Dating. We're not really dating you, but it's the best thing we can call what this is, which is basically a bunch of questions to dig into why you care about hoops and kind of how you got into it and all the rest. So thank you for joining us, and I'll just let you introduce yourself by way of our segment here, and I'll start you off with the first question. Who is the NBA player, and they can be young, they can be a vet, they can be whatever you're guided to, the player in the league that you can't quit, that you still believe in, that you still, against all reasonable thought, have optimism, can figure it out?
Wow, the player I can't quit. That's a good one. Oh, man, who can I quit? That's a tough That's a tough first question. I would say, if ever the day happens, I will be hard-pressed to quit that Jimmy Butler can't lead his team somewhere.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a great one.
That's a tough one.
It's a great one.
That'll be a tough one. Sooner or later, he's going to turn like 38 and not be able to do it and ramp it up. But that day going to have to come before I actually say it out loud.
But the Miami Heat will be the 8th seed when he's 38, and you will still think he's about to be Finals MVP.
I mean, he will look at me in the face and say, "We've been in AFC before and gotten to the finals," and I will shut up and move on.
Yeah.
Chris, that was better than our answers. I think I had Tobias Harris was my answer, that he's still going to be like a winning player on a great team someday and get over that finish line. Who was yours?
I think my first instinct was Okoro, just because I have like a anti-Deanne Waiters belief. But Deanne Waiters was also my answer because I'm like, oh, he will figure it out in some way. But he did win a title.
You guys were scraping the barrel. Okay, I got it now.
No, yours.
Yours is much healthier than both of ours. We went absolute like sicko, disgusting ones. Especially in my case, you went like the guy who's going to be 41 years old, has released 3 country albums since then, and will probably still make the NBA Finals.
Probably so,
Chris, and that's why Vince is a senior writer at Yahoo, and we are just mere podcasters, right?
That's 100%.
All right, Vince. Your favorite player type, archetype, the type of guy that you've gravitated towards watching hoops your whole life. If that's the scoring combo guard, the shot blocking center, the athletic wing, what's the type of guy that you always tend to fall in love with when you're watching?
Well, unfortunately, because I was a point guard when I played and I had all my hoop dreams, it's the point guard spot. It's the point guard that you're saying to yourself, if you squint, how good can he be? If you squint, can he, like the Penny Hardaway thing, like Penny Hardaway was supposed to turn into Magic Johnson. He just had to get over those injuries, and he couldn't get over those injuries, and there's only one of those guys. So it's like that point guard archetype that you kept trying to squeeze into the role that maybe his body or circumstances wouldn't let him be in. So I'd probably say a scoring point, a dynamic point guard.
Fantastic. We will get to James Harden and the Clippers, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and the Phoenix Suns after we make it through the rest of this list. The historical team, Vince, that you're most sure got screwed out of a championship. The team when you look back and you're like, they should have won one. Maybe it was an era. Maybe it was 1 year. Maybe it was this duo or that group that absolutely should have won a title.
Okay, you guys realize I'm from Detroit, right? So
yes.
I will say in the crates, the 88 Bad Boy Pistons, they got screwed by the refs, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, blah, 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 blah. But if we're saying a little more modern, the Sacramento Kings of Chris Webber, Mike Bibby, those guys. Granted, air balls in Game 7 at the crib, suboptimal. But the Lakers shooting 20 free throws in the fourth quarter of a Game 6 of an elimination game, I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all.
How conspiratorial do you get with it? Is it the refs just stole it from the Kings, or is it just things didn't break their way? Another year they would have done it.
It was, I think people in hindsight look at look at Donaghy and all that. I just think it was a poorly refed game with not a lot of, you know what I mean? Wasn't anything sinister there. But it was sure. One of the most poorly refed games I've ever witnessed. And I was in high school when I saw that. And I was like, this sucks.
It speaks to me, too, that has stuck with you because that has been a long time, and we've had, I think there's a couple of good modern answers to this question, but the Kings are also one of those franchises that's such a sliding doors moment because it took until last year, really, for them to have, actual competitive, really good basketball. And all respect to the Boogie Cousins era, and, I know you can be like, hey, Mike Malone had them in a great spot for a while, but it took, 20 years for them to have anything close to what they came so close to in what you're talking about there.
No, man, that wound I think is still probably there for that team. And I'm not a Sacramento Kings fan, but I was a Chris Webber guy and a Mike Bibby guy. So that one stuck with me. That one really stuck with me for a while.
Even if you ignore the Donaghy stuff, it's one of those curses that feels like something out there in outer space or up there in the heavens was going on, because that curse wasn't just stealing the title or the series. That was stealing a generation of fandom, and we're glad they're back. Let's just say that. All right, so Vince, I have behind me a Mikal Bridges jersey that I allowed myself to buy and be biased with once he left the Phoenix Suns.
Okay.
And then I have a Giannis Antetokounmpo jersey that I got as a sorry from his PR team because they were supposed to hook me up with an interview and did not. That one is signed. So the question that we have next is the jersey you wish, if you could go back in any point in history and get a signed jersey that you would put up in your office, framed, whatever, which one would it be? Who would it be? What would that look like for you?
It's unfortunate because I probably could get it signed at this point. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you not like a flex or anything.
It's fine to flex. It's true.
Flexing.
What?
Flexing is good. Flexing
it will
is good.
probably be a Blue Pistons Isaiah Thomas jersey. Favorite player of all time. Favorite team of all time. Probably the reason I became a sports writer in some roundabout way. And I'm lucky enough to actually know him and be able to have basketball dialogue with him. So if I got a jersey and everything else, I'm sure he would probably sign it for me, and I would hang it up somewhere around here.
Is he making the Suns' decisions?
Wow, no, he's not. But he's not running the Phoenix Suns.
Okay.
You've got James
Okay.
Jones there and Josh Bartlestein. Don't do that. That's not. But it was. I left. You know what? I left it open for you, and you walked through the door. I should expect nothing less.
I did.
Yeah.
It was an underhand pitch, and I had my bat ready. All right,
Yeah.
let's do one last one.
All right.
Because you answered the others already that we would normally ask through your other answers. Favorite basketball movie? What's the best basketball movie of all time?
I would probably say He Got Game. Denzel Washington, Ray Allen. It just touched on so many different things, and of course, it's Denzel Washington. You know what I mean? And there's a line in the movie.
Hard to beat.
It's a line in the movie. I know we're probably not allowed to curse on here, but
No, you
can go for it.
it
You can
was
curse,
young Ray Allen was playing his dad one-on-one, and he got mad and threw the ball over the fence, and he said, "Oh, that's what you're gonna do? You're gonna just run like a bitch?" And young Jesus said, "Yeah, a big bitch." So me and my friends, of course, in all of our immaturity, we will say that to each other in jest. You know what I mean? You gonna run like a bitch? Yeah, a big bitch. So I love that. I absolutely love that movie, man. Can't get enough of it.
That's my answer as well, Vince. And it's Spike Lee, one of our great directors, making this movie. I treasure this because you don't get a lot of our best directors, whether it's Scorsese, Paul Thomas Anderson, pick anyone in history. You don't really get them making a sports movie of any kind. You don't.
No. They turn their nose up at it.
And I couldn't tell you who made Rudy, but it's it wasn't Spike Lee. And Spike Lee made He Got Game, and we should appreciate the fact that someone who obviously is a huge basketball fan, a huge Knicks fan, used his energy, used one of the few things he gets to do on a sports movie with Denzel in it, and got Ray Allen to be really good in it, and introduced us to Rosario Dawson. I'll take that 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, there were definitely some scenes in there that 14-year-old didn't know what life was living like, and then I got older and was like, oh, life is really like that. Oh, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
No, it's great. All right. NBA talk. We got James Harden at Madison Square Garden, really quickly to be surpassed by Victor Wembanyama's debut at Madison Square Garden. It didn't really work out for James the way that I think maybe he might have hoped, but he, to me, looked a little more energetic and less rusty than I expected. You're just at a certain point watching how does he physically look as a basketball player. I guess okay, fine. He seems like he's going to be able to continue to play and contribute and have this integration process maybe not be as long as it could have been if health was also a factor. But Vince, they just didn't look together. They didn't look put together. That's understandable, but I hate to try. I want to try not to bring my preconceptions into it when I'm watching something like this unfold, but there were too many possessions where Russell Westbrook looks like he does not know where to be. He does not know what exactly he is supposed to be doing when the ball is not in his hands, and not only that, but when the ball is not in the other stars who he's now finally starting to learn how to play with in their hands. It's just one more guy, and it felt very obvious that the too many cooks, the spacing, all those problems are unavoidable for this group.
Yeah, it is. It's going to feel clunky. And I think Ty Lue said after the game or before the game that, you're going to look at this in 10-game increments. And you got to remember Terrence Mann is out. And you got to remember they have a glut of wings. They already had too many wings as is. And then you add a high usage wing and James Harden, because of the size he qualifies, as a wing. And they're going to play a lot of 4-out. And who's going to be the guy to play catch and shoot? That's the question. Paul George is naturally going to be the best candidate for catch and shoot because he's more of a quick twitch player than the rest of them. But I don't want him. I wouldn't want him to be relegated to that just because he's best used out of the 4 guys there. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those weird things that just because you're the best out of those 4 doesn't mean that should be your number 1 role. And that would be I won't say fear, but that's something there. James Harden, I think the first game, guys, is going to be super clunky because you're bringing in a really big piece for 4 smaller pieces that don't play the same position. And you're relegating Kawhi to the corner, which I think he won't be bad at. You know, I actually don't think Kawhi will be bad. I just think it's a adjustment to how he has to play. He has to be more catch and shoot. He has to be able to come off of stagger screens and stuff like that. It's going to be a big adjustment for Ty Lue because the Clippers are so ISO heavy. And you don't need James Harden to be ISO heavy. You need him to be the connector. You need him to be the guy that sort of brings things together, as opposed to Russ, who's just an infusion of energy and theoretically effort and heart. You know what I mean? It's a different mix, but I'd rather take the chance if I'm the Clippers because we know what it looks like if you don't.
All 3 of these guys have been on awesome starts. I want to read a quote to set the stage, and I'll pass it to you, Chris, because I think I had it saved and it's speaking to everything that's already come up. But George Westbrook and Kawhi, the other part of this, they've all been on great starts to the season, and that's part of what makes it's like you don't want to mess with a good thing. You finally have those 2, and then Russ, who you added along the way, playing well, playing together, winning, being healthy, and now you add this question mark. The quote that I had from Ty Lue, Chris, was specifically about how the role players are supposed to play, and it was in Jake Fisher's article, teammate of Vince's at Yahoo, where he said, all training camp in the first 5 games, we've been telling our guys to make sure they cut when Kawhi and PG are coming off the pick and roll in order to give them space because of how they play. But when James handles the basketball, now you have to try to be more spaced and just stay in our spots because he can make the pass and make those reads. And it just speaks to, like, on such a basic level, the adaptation that's going to need to happen for not only the stars to work together, but somebody like Mann, who's coming back, who Vince mentioned, or any of these other guys that have been kind of building toward, okay, we're healthy, we got our guys, this is how we're going to play. And James just, the system of James Harden just brings a whole new wrinkle to that. But what you got?
Well, my question's about Ty Lue, Vince. So you look at him, I would put him among the upper echelon of coaches in the league. Is this a job that, to some degree, as much as he can control, and he can't control everything, obviously, because you have the injury concerns baked in with this whole group, but is this a job that, like, in your mind, you look at it and say, okay, Ty is one of the coaches that actually can figure out how to maybe pull all the right strings here? Is he one of the guys that actually maybe could walk the line he's going to have to here to get the most out of this conglomeration of stars?
Well, I think strategically that can always be up for debate, right? Like, you can say someone else has a better offensive system and maybe we'll put guys in different positions. But with these guys being stars with big egos and having bigger roles throughout their entire careers, you're asking about buy-in. And it's less about strategy and more about personality, more about connection, more about, you know what I mean, relating to guys. And not like in a way that you're begging them to play. You can't beg guys to play. They see right through that. But if you're saying force of personality, I don't know if there's anybody that's better equipped to handle it. And I would have said Steve Kerr, but last year you had the Draymond Jordan Poole situation that's on his jacket. Even if he doesn't control that, he couldn't find a way to bring those guys together, right? I think Ty Lue, from a personality standpoint, is a guy that they will trust, that they will probably run through a wall for. Remember what we thought of Russell Westbrook before he got to the Clippers last year? We thought he was on his way out of the league. He washed out with the Lakers. It was a bad taste in everybody's mouth, and Ty Lue got him in the building, and literally we think of Russell Westbrook as a guy who's on a value contract right now. That is the strength of that type of coach. Maybe no coach can do it, right? I don't know if any coach can do it. If Ty Lue can't do it, I don't know anyone who could, and I guess that's the beauty of the situation because all of these guys are on basically make good contracts beyond this year.
That's the part of this, the extensions for the 2 main guys, the extension that Harden wants, and the value deal, as you correctly called it, with Russ. I know it's maybe not the topic that everybody's mind would go to feel bad for how much Russ is or isn't making given his past contracts, but it would be a little tough for me if I'm Russell Westbrook and am finally sacrificing in some of the ways that I've been asked to do for a while, continuing to play as I'm the oldest guy on this team too, and doing some of the things that I'm being asked to fit in, to be making, 10% of what these guys might make on their next deal, at least an eighth of what they're making. That feels underappreciated, specifically as it relates to Russ. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but yeah.
And here's the other point to it. Russ has signed a 2-year deal, and not to get too CBA on you guys, the Clippers can only give him so much, even if they wanted to. Like, just because they don't have his bird rights, given how they got him last year and how they signed and everything else. So they can go over the cap and into the aprons, which they will, assuming, this all works to a reasonable degree. Even if you wanted to pay Russ to that level, you couldn't. So I wonder how, if you're asking a guy to sacrifice on the floor and in the pocketbook, like, that's something that's very fragile, that relationship. You got to be able to keep that guy on there, even though he's the one player who feels like the odd fit with all of these guys right now.
The sacrifice is built into what his contract situation is. He has to be the guy that accepts that. Whether he actually does or not, it's either yes or no. Question for you, maybe to close out on the Clippers here, and we can move on to Phoenix, Vince. Mm-hmm. We did this after the trade happened, and I'm curious how you feel, because man is the ingredient that we haven't seen here. He became untouchable over the course of the talks with Philadelphia, from what it sounds like, and is a connective tissue type of player at his best. Who do you think closes games for this team? Is it all four of the stars and Zubats like the starting lineup currently is, or where do you see this heading? Do you think that it is possible to make that work, or do you think they're going to have to revert back to, hey, we just need some of the traditional role player types of guys to make this all come together?
That's an interesting one, because Plumlee being out, as a screener and as a roller to play with Harden, like, he's a better roller than Zubats, right? But Zubac is a bigger body, defensively and everything else. Like, it gives you different things. And he might be a better passer in the pocket than Zubac. Like, Zubac isn't a bad passer, but sometimes when the margins are that slim, y'all, like, you need if you're going to have a player in that spot and all he has to do is make a read and make a play, it can't be he can make a play. He can make a read. It is he has to. This is what he does. So with that, I'm very curious. I'm wondering if Terrence Mann or Norman Powell, because they're naturally better shooters, they're naturally better guys to play off of late in games, because they're not expecting the ball. And Norman Powell is a stockier, a stockier ball player that can sort of roam the perimeter, and he can play in catch and shoot situations while your other guys play ISO. I don't know if Russ is on the floor late. You know what I mean? But PG and Kawhi will be, if they're available. You would assume that Harden would be on the floor late, especially if he's your third best player, where you're not asking him to shoot. You're not asking him to carry you. You're asking him to be a facilitator. So even in that situation, Russ may be the odd man out. Even if by some ways you need Russ and his energy on the floor, I just think the high-low variance of it makes it so you might need someone a little more dependable and reliable from a standpoint of perimeter shooting.
Yeah, I think Highland and Powell have the biggest adjustment of the role players. Absolutely. Because they were doing what Harden is now doing for this team. And now where do they fit in? What are they supposed to be doing? How many minutes do they get? All that stuff. We also don't know if PJ Tucker at center is something that they'll explore as a closing lineup. I'm sure matchup-wise that may come into play. But let's move over to Phoenix, which we will see Bradley Beal debut for in Chicago on the road. They also play the Lakers and Thunder at home this weekend, so an interesting stretch for them. Kevin Durant has been incredible, Vince, to start the season. Booker remains out, but I'm too close to this team, so I'm going to kick it to Chris to set us up here for what's interesting about the Suns right now. What is the thing, Chris, that you have your eyes on that we want to get Vince's perspective on?
Well, so to me, it's Durant. So you talked to him. You wrote a really good piece about this, what's going on in Phoenix at Yahoo. When you were there and you talked to him and you got the lay of the land, even though we haven't seen Beal play in the regular season yet, and there's still a long way to go before we know exactly what this is, what did you feel like the energy was for Durant and for the organization when you were there talking to them and just seeing where they are as the season starts?
Well, it's positive. You know what I mean? And mind you, this was before they had discovered anything with Brad's back or Devin having anything with, a calf or an ankle. So they were all just saying, hey, we're going to play. And I think the 4 guys who play basketball, like I'm not saying that to be funny, but 4 guys who actually, or 3 guys rather, who like playing basketball and they like being around each other. Like that accounts for so much. With Kevin, the vibe was, I don't want to make things so hard for him. If I'm Frank Vogel, if I'm anybody else, my thought is, especially with this start, my thought is Kevin can do everything. He can facilitate. He can stand at the top of the key and navigate the double teams and everything else. But I don't want him to do that. Like, he's good at when things, I'm going to say he's great. He's the best at when things are easy. And that's not to say front runner. I'm saying when you're swinging the ball to Kevin Durant, there's nobody better at navigating the defense than whether it's taking off a dribble, going on the drive, spotting up a shoot. There's nobody better, not even Stephen Curry, is better at that particular thing. I don't want Kevin Durant going 1-5. I don't want him having to worry about players nipping at his legs and the possibility of a lower leg injury or whatever it is. Like, I want him to be at optimum strength. And I still think the optimism is there. I think from what I've seen, and I saw him over the weekend, a lot of the guys were saying, hey, better for us to go through this now than to go through this in the middle of the season when we're trying to really find it and we're trying to solidify ourselves. I think they're looking at it as a blessing in disguise. Some people may be looking at this as this is the way things are going to go.
So I guess my follow-up that is too, just with Beal. He obviously misses some time. He has the biggest adjustment, I think, of the guys that they have in there.
Of course.
What are your expectations for him as he gets going and as we actually see him playing? And look, I had to watch him for the first time, but in an environment that is expecting winning for the first time in what feels like forever for him.
Well, I think sometimes we have guys who have been in losing situations for so long we forget how good they are. And Devin Booker was one of those guys before they got to Chris Paul. We were just thinking, oh, good guy on bad team. We'll see what it's like when he actually has talent around him. And then, boom, he takes his game to another level. I'm not saying that's exactly the case for Brad because I think his best statistical days are behind him. But I do think we have to reevaluate. I think we will reevaluate how good Bradley Beal is. Because if you get Kevin Durant and Devin Booker on one side of the floor, and you've got Bradley Beal attacking the closeout and having one less defender in his face, let alone that defender being a weak defender that's in his face to begin with, he's going to be a really good and really efficient ball player. And I think once he's healthy, assuming he's healthy, because a back injury is nothing to play with, it's nothing to assume, because when your back hurts, your back hurts. You know what I mean? I'm going to tell you that as a man whose back hurts. Your back never stops hurting once it starts hurting, all right? So I'm not taking that for granted. But assuming health because of the way that they're slow walking it, I think he's going to be one of the best, if not the best, third option in the damn league. Right?
Yeah. I think so. I think I watch the Nuggets, and the thing that I feel like about them, and that's obviously the primary competition that Phoenix is looking at, they don't have holes in their offense. There's a lot of teams around the NBA. Boston will spread you out. They'll beat you in transition. They'll make a bunch of threes. What's their half-court offense look like, right? It's Milwaukee. I don't know what's going on early in the season for them, but half-court offense has been a question for them. The Nuggets, there's no, well, what about this? And I think what the Suns tried to do is give their own, there's nothing to worry about. There's no holes in this for whatever way they could build that. And their way of building that was a bunch of stars. And I think for that all to work, they have to get the ball handler Beal, sometimes in transition, sometimes in the half court. They have to get the spacer mover Beal to open things up. And they have to get the sacrificing Beal. You know what I mean? He has to be willing to be whatever the third option on a team like this is going to look like. One last question for you to get out of here. We'll pivot to the Warriors because I know you wrote about them a little bit today. Have they increased in your mind in terms of where you maybe had them in the pecking order, had them in terms of hitting the ground running and building chemistry with a lot of new pieces, young and old, integrating in there, and the way that Curry's looked? It felt I felt some optimism coming off you that maybe not everybody in the NBA or people who watch the NBA have.
Color me shocked, like, for one. You know, and I know it's early. It's very, very early, so early observations you don't have to be married to. I mean, hell, Dylan Brooks is shooting 56% from three. I don't know if that is going to hold up, right? But the fact that they've been able to integrate Curry and Chris Paul and play them together in this small window of time, and he's able to bring some order to it without changing the spontaneity. It's just a little bit more control and not feeling like, oh, yeah, we got these two small guards on the floor. Let's exploit them. No, we've got these two great elite guards on the floor. Oh, shit, we're in trouble. That's what it kind of feels like in that way. So, yeah, it's a little more optimism. I wasn't sure what you're going to get out of Kuminga. I wasn't sure how good Draymond Green was going to be. But they look like they know each other, and they don't have the cloud hanging over them that they did this time last year. Like Draymond Green didn't punch anybody in the face in training camp.
That certainly goes a long way.
It helps. It helps.
Nice run through the Western Conference. We pulled Vince over from his Midwest and East roots. Clippers, Suns, a little bit of Warriors. Hopefully the stuff at the beginning was fun as well. Thank you, Vince, for joining us, and we will be back with our audience next week. Kings, Magic, whatever Victor Wembanyama might do, a whole bunch to come. So hit that button down below. Follow, subscribe. Find us on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you are on social media. And we'll catch you guys. Read Vince at Yahoo Sports, of course, and we will catch you guys next week.